Okay, I'll call this special regional council meeting to order. Please be advised that today's meeting is being recorded and streamed on a publicly accessible website. I'll ask for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Councillor Dolan. Seconded by Councillor Penny. All those in favor? Carried. Business arising, outstanding items. Coronavirus update. Mr. Barry.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilors, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So we're continuing to deal with a steady flow of information from the province and various agencies. This morning we met with the local emergency services, meaning the RCMP, BCAS, the local hospital administrator, and the NRM EOC representative. We received some additional information that we're going to just cross-reference to make sure that we either have it on our website and Facebook page, and if not, ensure that we get it there. Some good discussion again this morning. A lot of focus regarding the vulnerable population of people in the community that potentially are vulnerable, and looking at ways to coordinate those services as we do our community outreach and coordinate with those agencies. There was some concern on the call regarding a lot of misinformation that is being shared on social media, which in a lot of cases is the case. So we're going to look at trying to increase focus to direct people to the areas where the information is accurate, with the BC Center for Disease Control and Northern Health sites, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, any of the links that we have on our website and Facebook page. We and the other municipalities in the Northern Health region were we do our daily EMDC call, so Emergency Management DC call. On Tuesdays, we typically do a Northern Health call. They are usually, which is coordinated through Emergency Management DC or EMDC, so that's occurring this afternoon. Just as some confirmation, all the playgrounds and parks within the municipality have been are closed and with appropriate signage, and we are routinely checking sites just to ensure that's not being utilized. Central Mountain Air this morning announced that they are suspending all scheduled flights effective April 11th through June 7th. So the tentative resume date for their flights is June 8th. This is not just specific to our airport, this is specific to CMA. So all they're suspending all the scheduled flights. And the work at the rec center, the annual shutdown work that was occurring has been completed, and additional layoffs occurred last week as a result. Currently we have approximately 44 employees that were affected in total overall from that we're currently navigating through. So that's it. We're continuing to obviously monitor the situation and adjust accordingly. And that's it for my answer.
Very well. Are there any questions, councillors?
Yeah, Councillor Andrews here.
Councillor Andrews, go ahead.
Can you repeat the part about the 44 or 54 employees, please, Scott?
Approximately 44 in total that have been affected either with layoff or in some cases have voluntarily taken time off due to various reasons, just higher employee or higher family or something like that. 44 overall. 28 of those are casual employees. The rest, a couple of part-time, and the rest of.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Any other questions? Very well. Moving on. Business budget 2020, Fort Nelson Fire Department budget for decision. Mr.
Okay. Sorry, Mayor, there's just there's a bit of an error there. The item 4.2 should actually be ahead of item 4.1. So
okay.
Budget next step
Right.
should be the first item. I apologize.
Mr. Barry, did you want to speak to this?
I just there was discussion last week, Mayor, regarding the potential reductions that council may wish to look at and link to the change of assessment for various classes. And I provided that information to regional council last week, outlining that approximately $775,000 would have to be reduced from the required levy or the tax levy to accomplish what the discussions were occurring last week regarding no raise in taxation if your assessment remains the same from as last year. So that's I thought was probably appropriate for council to have discussions, not looking for specific direction in terms of should we reduce that, because council doesn't really understand the impacts, or it's more around having a discussion after we get some guidance in terms of what those next steps may be in council to proceed. And I can provide some potential suggestions to that also.
So of the 775,000, the impact to residential taxpayers would be approximately 36,000, and the
32, sir.
32.
32,946 would be the reduction to the residents, 60,000 to business, and 682 would be the impact to industry for reduction in taxes. 26 for other.
Very well. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, can I just, I can hear the mayor very well. Scott is very in and out, and when he's in, it's quite echoey. I don't know if everybody else is having that problem, or is it just me?
Yeah, same problem here, Lorraine.
Sorry, it might be the fact that I'm turning my head and not directing myself to the mic, so I'll try to keep it closer. Is this working better, Councilor Burton?
Not really clear though, Scott. I don't know if you're too far from the mic, or I'm not sure. But the mayor is coming through really clear, which seems to me, I don't know if it's sound on my end, or I'm not sure.
How about now?
That's better.
I can try that. Maybe I was too close to the mic trying, and maybe that was the issue. Is this any better?
It's
Go ahead, somebody else.
it is a little bit better, but yeah, definitely not as clear as the mayor is coming in.
We'll try this and see if this is any better.
That's better.
Okay, were there any other questions on that reduction, the ask of administration to provide reduction if the assessment stayed the same and there was no increase in taxes? Very well.
One quick question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
What is the individual savings for residential if we were to make those cuts for an average property taxpayer?
So for $100,000 of assessment, if you took $100,000 off the taxation, then you're going to save $1.95. So if we did the math, there's could be somewhere in the range if you have $100,000 of assessment, somewhere in the range of maybe $10, $12 individually. If you had $100,000 of assessment, I'd have to do the math. Maybe Tony. Yeah, Tony's in the line there. She might be working out in the background there.
Yeah, sure. Actually, on what we provided on the document is that if there is no change in assessment on a town residential property, there is no increase in tax over 2019. And for residential town, and the same for town commercial. Does that help?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Moving on then to 4.1, Fort Nelson Fire Department budget for decision. Oh, sorry, just one moment.
So just for council's information, one of the things that we are obviously working on right now is opportunities. We don't know what the future looks like in terms of operations specific to certain service levels that we have currently reduced out of the right center. So there's an opportunity there. We are currently looking at working towards those particular reductions and what the impact would be. So the budget that you see today, which is the required tax levy, be $108,000 less than what the levy was required last year. There's that number is going to increase, meaning that there'll be a further reduction in the required tax levy.
Sorry, excuse me. I'm not catching anything you're saying, Scott.
Same for everyone?
Can I just offer a suggestion?
Oh, Jaylene is very loud and clear.
Okay, I was just going to offer a suggestion that I think the problem might be that Zoom's trying to take in multiple different audio sources at once, because not all of the users are muted when Scott's talking. So I don't know if that might help, and that even the tiniest bit of background noise with multiple audio sources can impact the volume in which they're being heard. So we might want to just try that before we jump onto a different system.
So Ross is just going to go in and mute everyone now, obviously with the exception of us. Can you hear me any better now, Councillor Gerwing?
I heard you well there.
And Councillor Gerwing, you're muted, but you're probably not muted on your headset. Okay, we can't hear you. If you can hear me better, if you could just nod.
Yeah, I can hear you better.
Okay, perfect.
But I was muted before, although it didn't mute on my picture. I was using my mute on my remote.
And I know Ross has been just trying to make some adjustments with the mics and stuff, so maybe that creates an issue too. How about now?
Better.
What it sounds like to me is that the audio source is coming from the webcam itself, and it's just picking up the room sound, which might make it a little bit more echoey. So I don't know if it's coming directly from your mic or if it's just picking up the room sound.
Okay, we're just going to do a test here right now. Can you hear anything I'm saying?
Yep.
Yes.
There's an issue. So how about now?
How about now? Can you hear us?
Can you hear anything now?
It's about the same for me.
Yeah. So that's probably the issue here that we're having.
So I wonder if we turn up the volume
Oh, it's the issue. Yeah.
speakers.
We had that switched over last time. So it's changed.
In the Zoom application, there should be different options for different audio. So you could actually more than likely turn off the webcam audio and just take whatever line input you're doing, if that's helpful. I don't know.
You want to see if Rob knows how to, just to be safe. He just walked in.
He did, yeah.
we just were playing off this yesterday.
Yeah, you want to text him?
Thanks.
Let my phone go away.
All right, now we're going to test to see, is that coming in louder?
No. Just.
There we go. How about now? Because now that should be on the right mic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's all it was then. We had the...
I'm turning you down.
Great job, everybody.
Yeah, that was way louder, Ross.
What now for me?
Oh, you were like too close, maybe.
I am yelling, can't you tell?
It sounds like it.
Your mic's
Okay.
a little bit hot there, Scott. Maybe just down a little bit if you have a volume control there.
Yeah, we're just gonna work it here. Ross will adjust my volume control from the in here now. He's probably pumped us up trying to get a better feed. I'm just watching him, our sound guy.
You're doing a great job, Ross.
It's
So I
100% better.
Counselors, Mr. Barry, do you want to continue on? Please.
I'll start.
Maybe back up a bit.
I'll back it up a little bit. Yes. Is this okay for sound now?
Yep.
Okay. So as I was saying, but most probably didn't hear is we are currently reviewing obviously the areas that we know we have current impacts and looking at opportunities to, we'll be reducing the budget. So currently the budget's, the required tax levy is about $108,000 less than last year's required tax levy. So we've reduced it based on what council's already seen. But the impacts of the rec facility are not showing in here right now. So we're actually working on that, and we'll be providing some information to council when we actually do review the rec center's budget. So you'll see an increase to that reduction. We'll have more of a reduction compared to last year. Additionally, as I communicated previously to council, also is council can amend this budget moving forward.
Okay, excuse me, Scott. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Councillor Penny is just texting me, and we've lost him. He's completely frozen out of the meeting.
No. Where'd he go?
Is he? Okay.
Oh, so he says, as soon as Jaylene started to speak, I was kicked out and cannot get back in.
I will send him another invite here.
Okay.
Danny vanished into space. Oh, there he is. Bless you, Councillor Roper.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews.
I went looking for Scott and couldn't find him.
We should have Councillor Penny joining us shortly here.
And there he is.
Well, hello.
Hello, Councillor Penny.
Jaylene had an effect on me. As soon as she started to speak, I was kicked out. So
We noticed that.
She made you speechless.
One thing I'll mention, if people do, because we have noticed this on other calls, sometimes you do get knocked off and have to rejoin the call. I haven't seen it where you can't get back in. But there is always the option, and in the email that was provided, there is the option to call in using the meeting number and the password that's provided. There won't be any video, but you'd be there in audio if for whatever reason you can't seem to get back in on the video.
Thank you. Mr. Barry, do you want to try this again? Third time the charm.
Third time the charm. So as I was saying, the existing budget that you have in front of you that was reviewed by council previously is about $108,000 less than the tax levy requirement from last year. So there is a reduction. What it doesn't reflect right now is the rec center being shut and what those impacts are, which we're working through right now. Again, what we don't have the ability to do is have an idea of how long that facility will be closed for. So it's the balance between what we know the impacts will be and what the potential impacts could be, and having enough budget in place that when the time comes to restart the center. With that said, council has the ability to amend their budget at any given time throughout the year. What they can impact, obviously, is once the bylaws passed prior to the May 14th deadline for the financial bylaw, they can't adjust the taxes required at that time. But they can make decisions throughout the year that can influence the budget in terms of the spend. So an IE would be if there's an organization out there, a social group or cultural group, a nonprofit group that typically takes funding or has funding come from municipality. There's, in light of the fact that there's some unknowns, if a certain we can use a golf course as an example. At this point, we don't know if the golf course will open late or open at all. But in order for it to operate at all, there needs to be whatever funding they require to operate based on what would be agreed by council. So that said, just because a budget would be approved doesn't necessarily mean that the funds need to be released to the various organizations or need to be used internally. So that option is always there for council if there's a level of hesitation in terms of what the outlook is going into the summer for various organizations, and including this organization, the rec facility as an example. So those options are there for council. And prior to the May 14th requirement to have the tax bylaw set, we will be providing some guidance or some suggestions in terms of reduction to the budget for the rec facility, considering it's closed. Get council guidance in terms of some ideas in terms of how far out we want to push that closure out to, but it's a bit of a crystal ball process there. And additionally, if there's other areas council would like to look at, obviously that's always on the table also. So I'll throw that out for that discussion. Why we thought we would look at the fire department and the airport today is from an operational perspective, unless council wants to look at changing the way those two departments operate. The budget is relatively lean just to look after the existing operations, which we're currently doing, even with the CMA flight not attending not coming in currently as of next week. The operation at the airport, for example, remain the same. We're still required to have the same level of service that's provided to allow any other planes to attend to land at the airport. So I'll throw that out for council discussion if you'd like to have any further discussion or any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. I guess my thoughts on this are that not only will there be some reductions and some tax savings in some departments, but we're also going to be looking at probably some tax or some spend increases in some departments, for instance, our emergency services, et cetera, as we grapple with the COVID-19. So, and because this is a moving target, we see the airport reductions in the Central Mountain Air and the rec center, and we don't really know the impact on those budgets items. As Mr. Berry said, they'll come to us later with some revisions once they get a better handle on this. Are there any other questions? Very well. I guess we will move into the fire department budget then. Mr. Childs, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me? Everything good? Okay, I'll just go over some key points from 2019 and then moving into the 2020 budget. So last year's 2019 Protective Services operational costs were under by 3%. Our fire calls in 2019 were up by 20 fire calls for the year, and we were down paid on call firefighters. Our current apparatus did receive some major servicing, and all of our pump testing was completed last year. Moving into the 2020 Protective Services budget, for the personnel budget, we're looking at a 3% wage increase, and that's pretty well due to the IFF wage contract negotiations. The services budget is 2% over 2019, and that's mostly due to the Canadian dollar. The supplies budget is the same thing. We're asking for a 1% increase over 2019, and that's due to the Canadian dollar. Utilities will stay the same as last year. In 2019, fire rescue generated $54,000, and that was from our motor vehicle incidents responding up and down the highway. We got $18,000 from the government for that, and our Fort Nelson First Nations fire protection agreement was $36,000. Property value risk in 2019 was $69 million, and a total fire save was $68 million. And we basically had a total loss of $1 million last year in fire loss. So our call volume for 2019 was 309. And just give you a little look into the future, today we're at 104 fire calls for the year so far. we've been really busy this year. So I don't know, that's going to get worse as the seasons change. Last year, we completed 228 business inspections. We did over 410 public education hours, from doing car seat installations, fire extinguisher training, and station tours, school visits, and different community events throughout the year. We did over 80 members of the public received free fire extinguisher training from the fire department. And we issued 115 burn permits last year. Last year, between the department, between the career staff and the paid on call firefighters, we logged in over 16,000 hours for training. We had 6 firefighters complete the JIBC leadership training program. 19 firefighters did the hazmat operations training. And we had 5 firefighters sign up for the NFPA 10,001 training. Our 2020 fire budget versus the 2019 budget. The operation budget last year was 397,440, and the actual was over by 66,000. The 2020 budget operational budget is 462,000 with an increase of 64,000. And due to the staff wages for the current contract, the Canadian dollar is a huge thing right now. The majority of our protective services equipment comes from the States, so we have to always pay that exchange rate from Canadian to American. And that's pretty well for the fire budget right now. Did you want me to go into the bylaw or just?
Let's hold it there and see if there's any questions. I have a few questions to begin with. The Fort Nelson First Nations Fire Protection Agreement, $36,270. Where does that figure come from? Is that a flat figure negotiated with the Fort Nelson First Nations, or is that on a per visit?
It's a signed contract, so they pay so much per household, so much per business. I think it's just businesses and household.
So it ratchets up if it's residential, if it's a single dwelling, a duplex, a fourplex, and then per business.
So it's on a per structure basis.
Yes.
Another question, the 6 firefighters who completed the 32 hours JIBC team leadership training. What is JIBC?
Sorry. So the JIBC is the Justice Institute of British Columbia. It's one of the fire colleges we use. We use the Justice Institute. We use College of the Rockies, and we use Vermilion Fire College in Alberta, and we use the Fire College in Alabama as well. It's just one of the fire colleges that we have access to do our training through.
And so this team leadership is like team building in-house?
Yeah, so basically what that entailed was teaching our firefighters how to be basically like a company officer on fire ground emergency scene. So it gives them incident command experience, dealing with little, like a normal residential structure fire, how they would deal with managing that incident.
Okay. NFPA 1001 training, what is that?
Yeah, so NFPA is the National Fire Protection Association. It's North American, and that's the basic training standard that they want all firefighters in North America to attain to. It's like an apprenticeship program, basically. It's your basic training from being no fire experience to getting the basic minimum firefighter experience and training. And it's just like a apprenticeship program.
Okay. The $40,000 in the personnel budget wage increase estimate, that represents the 3% increase of the IIFA?
Yeah. So that's the union's, this year's budget wage increase, which hasn't happened yet, but that's what we're predicting.
Okay. Are there any other questions, councillors?
Yeah, I have a question. Councillor Gerwing. So if it's decided this year to get an increased level of perhaps just saying, for example, paramedic training for firefighters that might be interested in that. Is there any room in this budget to make that a reality, or would that require extra funds?
So in our training budget, we put forth, I think it was EMR training for 5 firefighters or 6, or maybe it's first responder. We have budgeted for medical training for this year. Last year, we trained all of our career staff up in first responder level 3, which is EMR. Basically, we're 1 week short of EMR training. The plan would be, if council wanted to move in that direction, we did have some money put aside to continue with medical training this year and then moving on in the future.
Thank you.
Great.
Mr. Barry?
Thank you.
Additionally, councils, is our training budget right now, we haven't gone into make, there's no reductions in the overall training budget for the municipality. And knowing that there's some training that's probably not going to proceed, it's one of those areas where, again, we're cautious of making reductions if there's a chance that there could be training somewhere else, because that's where we would be able to shift funds from within that existing overall organizational training budget. If we looked at opportunities, something to what you just brought up, Councilor Griffin.
So we could have our full career staff trained up in 40 hours to meet EMR, just the EMR one. So,
Any other questions, councillors? Very well. Mr. Charles, you want to move on to bylaw and animal control?
okay, so moving on to the bylaw. So last year we had 115 bylaw incidents, and that's all complaint driven to the bylaw phone at the fire hall there. Animal control responded to over 90 calls for service. So between cats, dogs, mostly wandering dogs. Last year, the euthanized 1 cat. No dogs were euthanized last year, and 5 complaints have been received from the rural areas. So we're starting to notice a lot of animal control complaints from like Fort Nelson First Nations. We don't go to them, but they're starting to call in. So I don't know if that could be a future revenue for the municipality if they wanted to look at contracting that service out there as well. I don't know if that's something they want to look at, but we do get a lot of complaints outside of the animal control agreement area lately. So,
Mr. Charles, whereabouts is the animal control boundary?
Right now, it's the town boundary. So, the old town boundary. So
Okay.
we go by the street lights by Tim Hortons, that cut off,
Okay.
to Valley View. Is it Valley View?
Parker Creek?
Yes.
Yeah.
The
And
old town boundary.
not Fed you sub, but
No,
the West Coast condos?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Carry on.
So for the animal control, pretty well as business as usual. We haven't asked for any increases there. We kept it all the same.
Are there any other questions regarding animal control? Okay. Moving on.
1 second.
Sorry, I've got a question.
Go ahead, Councillor Penny.
Just wondering about, we didn't have any dogs euthanized. Is that due mainly, do you think, to the Takashi Animal Rescue? Have they been taking on finding homes for any of these animals? Is that something that's happened?
Yeah, so basically last year what happens is Jim Hart, who's our animal control officer, he's really big on educating people. So he'll go get the dog or the animal, he'll track down the owner, bring the animal home, and try and convince the animal owners to take care of their dogs more. In the event that he can't contact the owner, we have used the animal rescue, and most of it is through just educating the animal owners. And just so you know, we're still running our animal control officer is still out just doing complaints when it involves life safety stuff. So he's not out patrolling as much today as he was. And that's just due to the COVID and issues we're dealing with. So we just want to, but any emergencies at all, he's on call and he will attend the calls. And if needed be, I would back him up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, there's been, from my experience, a huge difference without the patrols. Like I'm encountering unleashed dogs every day now. So it's made a big difference.
Okay.
I have a
Councilor Roper.
Yeah, in a previous meeting, we had made a request to find out if there were cost savings due to Takashi's Animal Rescue Societies. That answer back, but I'm still curious. What are the cost savings from not having to euthanize those animals that we used to have to do?
I don't have that answer, but I can find out for you. I know right now just last week itself, we dealt with 2 dogs. One was attacking deer, and I think the other one was an aggressive dog. And when contacting Streeper's Kennels, he wouldn't take them at the time. And to our understanding, Takashi's is closed right now due to the COVID. So last week we had conservation deal with the animals, and I think they were brought back to their property owners.
Thank you. I think if I recall correctly, there was something brought to council. I believe Super Kennels had a flat rate, and then there was so much increase if the number of dogs that had to be euthanized was over a certain amount, and the municipality had never gone past just the flat rate. But it's not a full answer to your question, Councillor Roper, and I think maybe we should bring that back, because I can't recall what else was said regarding cost savings and how much Takashi was saving the municipality, if any.
Yeah. Would it be helpful if we made a motion to gather that information?
Sure. Do you want to go ahead and make the motion, Councillor Roper, then?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion to find out the dollar savings, possibly an average per year, before Takashi's Animal Rescue Society started doing their work. I'd like to know just a ballpark dollar figure as to what we are possibly saving.
Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Andrews.
Yep.
All those in favor? Carried. Very well, moving on, Mr. Berry, next steps here for
the budget, sir?
our budget, yes.
So Chief Child still has the capital stuff to go through.
Okay.
And because council, if they wish, can approve the entire fire department package as is after going through the protective services budget. Sorry, I'm not sure what's left, but they can approve the whole thing, including the capital, if there are no concerns with the capital, or they could piecemeal. It's entirely up to council.
Okay, well, let's do the entire presentation from Chief Childs, and then we'll see if council wants to do an approval or take some out. Go ahead.
Okay, so we'll move to the pink tabs. So just moving to the pink tabs, the self-contained breathing apparatus. Since 2018, we've been doing an upgrade to our in-house fire department SCBA breathing apparatus, and we're following the NFPA 1981. And this year, to complete that, we require 4 new apparatus. So it's just continuation of the last 3 years what we've been upgrading our old SCBA to. So today we have 4 units that still need to be replaced.
The standards have increased on those apparatus as well, have they not? So some of the apparatus that we have is now obsolete.
Yeah, so the problem was what we try to do is we try to do an upgrade program with our Scott packs. So instead of going out and buying brand new ones, we can just buy the new equipment that's required to make them NFPA compliant, and we just did in-house upgrades. But those packs that needed to be replaced were so old, they would not take the new upgrade, so we had to buy new packs.
Okay. Are there any questions on these upgrades for the Scott packs? Very well. Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. The next one is the UAV Fire Safe Wildlife Mitigation Project. Did you want to comment to that, Aaron?
I can take this one quickly, James. So this is just a carryover of some unspent funding from the Rural Dividend Project. And it was to purchase we were going to purchase a lens for our drone with the unspent funding. So that has received council approval via an email, I believe. That was quite some time ago, so.
Moving on to the next one is the gas monitors and our docking station. So Northern Rockies Fire Rescue, we run hazmat calls, hazardous materials calls. We run highway motor vehicle incidents up and down the highway. We do go to the rec center for ammonia alarms, and the majority of our medical calls, we monitor the air in people's homes. So if there was a hidden carbon monoxide poisoning and they weren't aware of it. So we use our gas monitors quite a bit. Along with, we loan our monitors out to the waterworks department quite a bit. The problem we're having is right now is that our current gas monitors have reached their life expectancy. So we're starting to have a lot of little issues with them. They're failing. We're having to spend a lot more money on bump gas. We're going through a lot more sensors than we ever have. They're really old pieces of equipment. What we're proposing is to upgrade our current MX6 iBird gas monitors to new MSA Galaxy 2 gas monitors, or sorry, MSA Altair monitors. And we're asking for $15,000 to do this upgrade. So we'll get rid of our industrial scientific monitors, switch to the brand new MSA monitors. And with the docking station, it's going to save us money that we spend on bump gas, because we can do 4 monitors at once versus we have to plug one in now, unplug it, plug another one in. Just technology's got a lot better. So we're going to have a little bit of cost savings on our bump gas and replacing the sensors as much as we have to today.
Okay, and councilors, any question on the gas monitoring docking system? Okay, thank you. Continue, Mr. Charles.
And that'll be my last one.
Okay.
So Mayor, if council doesn't have any other questions or concerns, they may wish, if they elected to discuss any issues, obviously with the budget, any particular part of the budget, or if they wish, they can, it's up to council's discretion to approve the protective services budget as a whole, which would look after everything. So I'll leave that for council.
Okay. Councilors, that's the protective services budget. Are there any questions? Councilor Gerling.
I would make the motion to accept the protective services budget as presented.
Can I get a seconder, please? Seconded by Councilor Penny. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you.
Okay, so on to the airport. So I'll just run through some highlights from last year. I'm looking at the departmental operating summary that should be behind tab 24, behind the big tab 5.
What page on the agenda would that be? 35? ahead.
You got?
Yep.
So just going through the operating summary, lightly taking some highlights from last year. In 2019, our operational budget was overall about 7% under budget. Most of that is contributed to materials and supplies that we made some operational advances last year, particular to the de-icing chemical, which is super expensive. So we just spent more time doing some plowing and sanding and sweeping without the chemical, and we're able to not have to use as much. So some significant savings through that practice. When looking at the 2020 budget, we're asking for an overall increase of about 1%. There's an actual 11% reduction in materials and supplies. That was pretty easy to achieve, just small savings, hardware, that kind of stuff. That's now captured in the tech budget for the asset renewal phase. So we reduced it that way. And we have a 13% increase in services for 2020, specific to the safety management system, which is a regulatory requirement from Transport Canada, as well as an updates required of our airport operations manual, which is well beyond its age and usefulness. And also the need to conduct a mandatory audit of the safety management system, which all requires consulting services. Through that, last year we had a Transport Canada audit, which resulted in the need to up our consulting services for safety management system and the airport operations manual. We welcomed Mr. Humphreys last year as our new airport manager, who started with us in October. The airport asset management plan is complete. You'll see some capital requests and projects associated with the result of the asset management plan for the airport. The Canadian Armed Forces, Erin will probably talk to this in some of her budgets, but the Canadian Armed Forces came up here and did a tabletop with us, which was quite exciting. And the airport staff also conducted their own tabletop exercise applicable to our own airport and our own needs. On the airside, ground side of things, we conducted a survey specific to the obstacle limitations services. You'll see a project request specific to that. The survey concluded that we need to consider a lot more area in our OLS, and we're currently working to define what that area is. It could be upwards of 150 hectares of additional clearing that we may need to do. We have other options that we're looking at, which include currently we comply with the 4th edition of the TP312, it's called 4th edition. With the renovations for 0422, our main runway, that'll bring us up to TP312 5th edition, which we close to comply with already, and there would be very little additional clearing required. So we're working with Transport Canada to look at some of those options to reduce the need for us to clear. Any questions on that one?
You pointed out that the expense of the de-icing material, that's de-icing material that is used for the runway, chemical, which would be our expense, whereas the de-icing that is used for aircraft is at the airline's expense.
Yes.
Yeah. So what you were talking about is a reduction in our costs.
Chemical for the runway, correct.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, carry on.
So we did have some activity with Ministry of Forest last year, who advised that our Apron 3 was unable to support their heavy air tanker. So they relocated to Apron 2 as a temporary means, and they're good for another 2 or 3 years. We'll be working with them this year to define what their needs are specific to Apron 3 and looking to rehabilitate Apron 3 pursuant to that. We don't currently know what that picture looks like, so that's our first step. And hopefully there's some grant opportunities that'll help us support that. Last year, we were awarded an ACAP grant, and we successfully obtained a grader. And just skipping the last line there for operational times, we talked about that with the icing. The statistics are passenger totals. They reduced a little bit. This graph, I apologize, goes from 2012 to 2019. That should be the number at the bottom of that graph. You can see significant decline since 2012. Our medevac numbers for 2019 are still relatively high. And for projects, we completed the majority of the airport connector main. There's a little bit of deficiencies for this year. So essentially, our municipal water system is going strong at the airport. The airport reservoirs have been expanded, and upgrades to the lift station were completed and commissioned.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned a grader. What was the value of that grader?
$354.
And how much did that grader cost the citizens of the Northern Rockies?
$0.
$0. Thank you.
We just, Councillor Penny here. I think the only cost that we incurred was we paid a little extra to have a better warranty, was it not?
Correct. Yeah. $4,000, I believe it was.
Very good. Anything else, councillors? Very well. Okay, moving on to capital.
All right. So for capital, the apron renewal, I talked a little bit about that. That relates to the air tanker base issue. These monies are carryover from the 0826 request that we had in place the last couple of years, looking to get a grant opportunity to rehab that. Part of those considerations was apron 3. We dropped apron 3 about 2 years ago because of a significant cost to rehab just that portion. But now we have a refocus on apron 3. And that's part of what I discussed when we were talking about with BC Wildfire and what do they want. So we're hoping we can spend this money on geotech once we figure that out, and some survey to help get to a final design and grant opportunity. The airport sewer master plan. So 5 years back, probably a little bit more than that, we did a feasibility study on the options relating to our sanitary sewer out at the airport, which is its own system. And it provided a whole bunch of options, but it was difficult to determine one because we didn't have the condition of the existing sanitary system. So we have identified that condition now, and now we need to look forward into what are reasonable options based on our existing ability of that system, and giving consideration to its life and what we can expect. The obstacle limitation service I spoke about already. Do you have any further questions on that one?
Any questions, councillors, on that? Go ahead.
The airport perimeter fence. So this one's an ACAP grant, 1.29 million. Likely some local opportunities in that project. 2.7 kilometers.
Any questions on the fencing?
The airport connector main, these funds are just carryover in order to finish off whatever deficiencies remain, which includes a little bit on the reservoir and some at the water treatment plant. Very little. In fact, we're 99% done at this point. And all grant funding has been claimed.
Okay.
Runway 0422, this is the ACAP application. If this rehab goes through, this will bring us to much closer to that TP 312 5th edition, which will reduce our maintenance requirements associated with the OLS.
When do we find out about the that funding?
I'm gonna suspect, I'm guessing, next year.
Okay.
Airport renewal. So we have a reserve contribution of 287 that just goes into a savings account for future infrastructure needs. Airport drainage. There's a few drainage issues, some storm drains close to the parking lot, and a few culvert repairs that are required. So we've identified $160,000 to do some drainage repairs. The airport wastewater rehabilitation project. So this one's specific to sanitary sewer. This one, we just found an area. The majority of this is just to cap and decommission existing sanitary lines. Basically, the big concern there is they're a hazard. They could cave in and cause some safety hazards. So we want to cap those. Airport fencing renewal, $50,000 is requested to repair heaving. And this is with that chain link fence. You'll see it on from air side to ground side. So there's a significant portion of that fence is just heaved. So we need to do some maintenance there. Airport master plan. This one relates specifically to the airport asset management plan. So the airport asset management plan identified some significant funding gaps relating to infrastructure needs, operational needs, and the revenues coming in. So we had a project under planning for land use. So we've absorbed that project into this airport master plan so we can look at everything all inclusively. This is to look at the airport strategically, looking at the leases, the revenues, the tipping fees, the uses, the basic needs of the infrastructure to ensure that we can maintain our minimum service needs. And this will advance us in that regard while giving consideration also to growth scenarios. Runway 02826 is off the table. We did not get that grant.
Are there any other questions, councillors? Very well. I'll ask for a motion then to approve the budget for the airport.
Councillor Andrews will move it.
Moved by Councillor Andrews, seconded by
I'll second that.
Councillor Roper. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. New business items, next meeting confirmation. Oh, Mr. Barry.
Sorry, Mayor. We didn't actually go through the EMO or animal control pinks.
I'm sorry,
It's
okay.
part of the fire department, so that's my bad. So if I can just, if I can get your attention back to, we'll say tab 3, section 9. So the back to the fire end, and there's EMO pinks with the. So maybe Aaron, you can speak to the EOC, the evacuation route planning, etc. So my apologies there, and then we have the emergency measures budget, and then after that we have the bearware, which is essentially a pre-approval already account. So I'll let you speak to it, Aaron, if you may. Thanks.
So behind tab number 9, you have the pink sheets that are attached to the emergency measures. All of these.
Formal notification.
Okay, and use this act number 33.
And,